Chosen one, hey powerful soul, welcome in. If you've ever been called a legend and a villain in the same breath, congratulations, you're doing something right. You weren't made to be digestible. You weren't born to fit into everyone's comfort zone. You're here to disrupt, awaken, and remind the world that authenticity doesn't ask for permission. Let's get one thing clear. If everybody agrees on you, you've probably traded truth for approval. And that's not your style. Some see you and feel inspired. Others see you and feel exposed. Same energy, different lenses. That's not your burden. That's your brilliance. You walk in like a revelation, and suddenly folks don't know whether to imitate you, interrogate you, or invent stories to explain the fire they feel in your presence. But here's the secret. The chaos around your name, it's not about you, it's what you activate. You carry frequency, depth, and clarity in a world addicted to the surface. That makes you a mirror. And mirrors don't lie, they reflect. Some use that reflection to evolve, others use it to run. So whether they call you too much or just enough, divine or disruptive, know this. The real ones will feel you, not just see you. The chosen never blend in. They burn through illusion. Now buckle up, because we're about to peel back the layers, break the narratives, and reclaim every misunderstood piece of your magic. This is your confirmation. You were never the problem. You were always the mirror. Let's go. Looking for purpose and peace? Hit subscribe and start the journey. They often react not to what stands before them, but to what awakens inside them. It isn't the presence that unsettles them. It's the stir of realization it evokes. For some, it's a quiet ignition, a recognition that authenticity can exist without apology. To others, it's an unwelcome disruption that rattles the scaffolding of their curated identities. Encounters become distorted through the lens of self-perception. The more unresolved the inner world, the more fragmented the interpretation. Genuine clarity can be mistaken for conceit, and calm mistaken for detachment. There's no performance, no effort to impress or provoke, just an unwavering existence that gently nudges others to reconsider their own narrative. Those who've learned to look inward will see something familiar, something freeing. Those who run from their own truths will brace against what feels invasive. From afar, this creates a spectrum of projection. Some invent ideals to worship, others create fictions to reject. The reactions have little to do with the actual person present, and everything to do with the unresolved questions others aren't ready to answer. Not everyone seeks reflection, but sometimes simply being becomes a silent challenge to the stories others cling to. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. There's a tension born from unintentional confrontation, not of action, but of essence. The mere act of remaining whole in a fragmented world can cause friction. Some will feel encouraged, glimpsing their own potential through someone else's survival. Others will flinch as that same presence stirs dormant fears they've long tried to bury. There's no calculated rebellion, just a refusal to disappear in order to make others comfortable. That resistance, however, becomes a provocation. A paradox forms. The same individuals who discredit might mimic, oscillating between criticism and imitation. They may not understand why they're drawn to what unsettles them, why they resent what also inspires. This confusion breeds contradiction, admiration tainted with envy, closeness laced with tension. In some, the encounter becomes a turning point, planting the quiet suggestion of growth. In others, it becomes a wound to nurse in silence. The presence isn't medicine or poison, it simply amplifies whatever was already there. The discomfort isn't caused, it's revealed. To stand firmly in one's truth often means navigating a maze of misunderstood reactions, not as a guide or a provocateur, but as someone simply refusing to vanish into convenience. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. Some only feel tall when others remain on their knees. They draw their sense of order from watching others stay unsure, hesitant, or tangled in roles never meant for them. When that script starts falling apart, so does the illusion they call power. What once gave them the upper hand begins to slip away the moment another dares to rewrite the narrative. Independence doesn't just threaten their ego, it dismantles the entire system they've built around borrowed control. The shift isn't dramatic from the outside, but for them, it's a landslide. Their comfort relied on someone else's limitation, and once that disappears, they are left staring at their own lack of substance. Support turns sour. Encouragement becomes strategy. What looked like care was often a disguise for control. It isn't betrayal they feel, it's the fear of no longer being essential. When strength appears where they expected weakness, when clarity silences manipulation, they panic. Emotional masks slip. Praise turns into criticism, warmth into detachment. Their influence loses its grip, and without it, they're unsure how to exist. They don't mourn the person's change. They mourn the loss of relevance. The ground beneath them was only steady as long as someone else stood still. Now that movement has begun, the stage they ruled over crumbles. Some presences don't whisper, they unsettle. They enter with stillness, but that stillness causes internal disarray in those clinging to pretense. For some, it's an inner alignment they didn't know they needed. For others, it's an abrupt collision with feelings long suppressed. What unsettles isn't what is said, but what is felt. Not loud or forceful, but undeniable. There's an alchemy in presence that stirs what lies dormant. It's not about charisma or charm. It's the invisible tension between what someone has hidden and what another unknowingly surfaces. One moment it's serenity, the next, discomfort. The reaction is rarely about what stands in front of them, but what awakens behind their own facade. Perception splits. Some interpret that presence as grace, others as disruption. Both are right. To those who've outgrown their illusions, it feels like a return. To those still defending them, it feels like exposure. The same energy that uplifts one will unravel another. That duality isn't contradiction, it's honesty. It's what happens when someone's truth brushes against someone else's denial. Without lifting a finger, storms are stirred, peace is offered, walls are tested. The labels that follow are only reflections of where each person stands with themselves. They reach for explanations, but can't decide if the presence before them is a beginning or an end. That confusion says everything. Clarity isn't what causes confusion. It's the unhealed past it brushes against. Responses aren't shaped by what's said or done, but by the echoes of memory carried within the listener. Some translate quiet as serenity, others as punishment. A pause can be mistaken for indifference and firmness for hostility, not because these things are true, but because they resemble old wounds wearing new faces. It's not the presence that's difficult to understand. It's the emotional history others unconsciously superimpose on it. Encounters become like old films projected onto new screens, the script already written long before the moment begins. Many are fluent only in the language of survival, unable to grasp authenticity without twisting it into something familiar yet false. When they've only known control disguised as care, strength reads as aggression. Calm becomes suspicion. They do not meet the person. They meet the unresolved chapters of their own story. Reactions shift not because of contradiction, but because of the filter doing the seeing. The hardest part is not being mislabeled. It's knowing the labels aren't even about the present, but about the pain others haven't yet unpacked. Some sense they're misreading, but refuse to update the narrative. Accuracy would demand accountability, and many aren't ready to trace their triggers back to their source. The misunderstanding isn't real. It's a mirror covered in dust, and few are willing to clean the glass. Step beyond the screen, join and help light the way for others. Interpretation often reveals more than identity ever could. Before words are spoken, assumptions are etched. Some assign roles out of habit, not to connect, but to contain. For some, the elevation of another becomes a reflection of their own hopes, as if proximity to light might ignite something dormant. For others, shrinking someone else becomes the easiest way to avoid looking inward. Praise and critique often stem from the same place: the need to remain untouched by discomfort. What one sees as a model, another sees as a threat. Neither see clearly. Instead, they cling to the version that supports their structure, the image that lets them sleep without questions. The pedestal and the pit are crafted from the same desperation, to remain unchallenged by truth. When someone grows beyond the box they were placed in, it doesn't just unsettle perception, it disrupts the illusion of safety in the observer. Dismissal becomes defense. Flaws are stretched into stories. Mockery becomes a shield, because to admit reality would require effort, a shift, a reckoning. The most vocal critics are often those who never looked closely. They narrate without reading, summarize what they fear, not what they know. And through it all, the constant remains: truth doesn't yield to opinion. It stands, unmoved, while others rearrange their stories to protect fragile identities. Whether celebrated or condemned, it remains untouched. There's a kind of presence that unsettles without intention, not because it seeks to outshine, but because it illuminates a path others pretend doesn't exist. It carries no need for decoration or noise, yet its depth can't be ignored. That quiet gravity speaks louder than any performance, and those who rely on surface-level influence feel it like a silent revolt. In rooms where image reigns, substance disrupts the natural order. No crafted reputation, no polished role, no strategic alliance can substitute for what radiates without effort. The unease it creates isn't personal, it's structural. When someone walks in unbothered by status, untouched by pretense, they expose what others spent years trying to disguise as worth. They don't barter for approval. They don't reduce themselves into digestible versions. They exist fully, freely. And that alone can spark a quiet crisis for those who haven't met themselves without mirrors. Mockery becomes a defense. Subtle jabs become veils for envy. The discomfort isn't about personality, it's about essence. And essence cannot be copied, earned, or borrowed, only embodied. Some can feel it and don't know why it unnerves them. But deep down, they recognize a currency they cannot counterfeit. And because they cannot replicate it, they attempt to dilute it. But truth does not flinch. It does not compete. It simply continues. While others exhaust themselves performing for a prize they already lost by pretending. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. There's a tension that rises whenever someone refuses to play a fixed role. The ones who once offered praise start shifting tone when growth no longer fits their expectations. They do not react to the changes. They react to the loss of control those changes reveal. For some, the original version was easier to handle, safer to define, more useful to their self-image. So when someone steps outside that line, the whole narrative fractures. The audience becomes confused, not because of contradictions, but because they watched a version, not a person. Control disguised as care turns sour, and applause turns to critique as soon as autonomy enters the room. The evolution isn't the betrayal. It's the boundary that forces others to confront their own limitations. They label growth as instability, progress as ego, expansion as betrayal. Not because those labels fit, but because the truth terrifies them. If one can outgrow the version they were given, then others might have to question why they remain the same. And that's too much. So they rewrite the script, flip loyalties, twist perception, all to protect a narrative where they never have to change. Their inconsistency is not about confusion, it's about comfort. And when that comfort is threatened, their allegiance evaporates. Growth demands clarity, and clarity has a cost. Not everyone comes with you. Some will switch sides because they never stood beside you. Only the idea of you that never challenged their illusions. Let them go. Real connection doesn't fear transformation. It expands with it. Complexity is not a flaw. It is the language of depth, and not everyone is equipped to read it. Those seeking clarity in the form of simplicity often miss the entire point. Some lives are built across dimensions, not headlines. While others reach for definitions, you unfold in contradictions, not to confuse, but because growth demands it. Moments of stillness carry just as much weight as your fire, and both hold truth. But nuance is a territory most avoid. They crave the comfort of certainty, of a version that stays static and predictable. The desire to summarize comes not from understanding, but from control. To hold someone still long enough to feel superior. And when your path resists that framing, they panic. They twist singular experiences into verdicts, crafting identities based on fragments they don't care to revisit. It is easier to confine you than to witness your evolution. Yet no one chapter defines the whole. You span lifetimes in spirit, shedding skins and roles with each breath. To those unwilling to explore further, you remain a puzzle they label broken. But a shifting being is not inconsistent. It is alive. Legacies are not etched in catchphrases. They are forged in how often someone reclaims themselves. Those who misunderstand complexity often do so because they fear their own. Let them reduce what they cannot reach. You are not here to simplify your soul for shallow minds. You are here to remain unboxed, ever becoming, always honest with the full range of your becoming. Dominance built on illusion trembles in the presence of truth. Some spaces operate like mirrors that only reflect vanity, where worth is stapled to applause, status, or curated success. Then someone walks in unbothered by their rules, and the entire construct begins to unravel. not by attack, but by contrast. It isn't defiance, it's presence, raw and unrehearsed, that disrupts their balance. While others decorate themselves with borrowed light, some carry something internal, earned through pain, refined by solitude. That kind of energy doesn't seek to rise, it just doesn't bow. And that is the threat. Entire ladders lose meaning next to those who never climbed them but still stand tall. The room tightens, not because of conflict, but because of confrontation, a quiet exposure of what lacks depth. Those who relied on perception feel displaced when faced with someone they cannot outperform or outshine, not because of volume, but because of essence. That's when ridicule becomes a defense mechanism, not rooted in truth, but in the terror of irrelevance. Those addicted to hierarchy don't fear rebellion. They fear irrelevance in the presence of someone who didn't ask for permission. And while some observe and awaken, others reject and retreat. But the ripple is undeniable. Real power does not perform. It recalibrates the entire environment simply by existing. It does not destroy the system. It renders it obsolete. Some reactions have little to do with clarity and everything to do with internal resistance. When someone claims you're confusing, it's rarely because they can't read you. It's because you stir parts of themselves they've carefully hidden. You don't arrive with the intent to unravel anyone, yet your presence sends cracks through carefully staged facades. Those who thrive on appearances feel their image waver in front of someone anchored in self-truth. It isn't a lack of understanding that drives the discomfort, but a silent clash between authenticity and performance. What seems like distance is often discomfort they can't name, so they paint you as intense or distant, when in truth, they're scrambling to keep their story intact. Their response is not about you. It's the tension of watching the mask slip in a mirror they didn't know was present. The more real you are, the more they have to lie to themselves to maintain the version they've curated. Their dismissiveness, their passive withdrawal, their confusion, all symptoms of a deeper unrest they've postponed for too long. To face you honestly would mean to face themselves completely, and that isn't something everyone is willing to do. It's not misinterpretation. It's emotional warfare cloaked as misunderstanding. The unease has roots deeper than your presence. You just happen to activate it. Some people secretly depend on your failure to justify standing still. They've built a framework around limitation and use it as a shelter, a reason to never leap, never shift. You are not part of their plan. You don't emerge from privilege, safety, or comfort. And yet, you rise. That's threatening. You aren't supposed to do well without the credentials they cling to. Your progress exposes a hard truth. Survival isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. And you are the inconvenient reminder that excuses are temporary shelters, not permanent homes. Some watch in awe, not because you performed miracles, but because you disproved their logic just by continuing. Your growth breaks their defense, not by debate, but by example. Those who choose stagnancy will see your evolution as an attack. They need you to fail so they don't have to change. You didn't confront them, your existence did. And that's why they distance themselves or cast you as arrogant. They need a story that keeps you small because your success would force them to question why they stopped moving. You don't carry blame, you carry evidence. Not everyone welcomes proof that progress is still possible. For some, you are a spark. For others, a disruption. But what you represent cannot be unlearned. That healing is not owed, that growth isn't always graceful, and that rising can begin even after the world counts you out. That realization is uncomfortable, but necessary. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. There are those who walk into a space and shift its rhythm without lifting a finger. It's not charisma or performance. It's resonance, ancient and electric, like something remembered rather than learned. They don't try to awaken anyone, but their presence shakes what's been asleep. In some, it revives pieces once buried under compromise and fear. Instincts, courage, forgotten clarity. They feel a stirring they can't explain, like a signal from some deeper timeline. In others, that same presence collides with layers of pretense. It confronts the constructed self, the version built for approval, maintained through routine, disconnected from essence. When two frequencies clash, only one can hold. And that's where the discomfort begins. People start to distance, label, avoid, not out of dislike, but because of what they'd rather not confront. The more rooted someone is in illusion, the more threatened they become by something that doesn't waver. It's not confrontation, it's contrast. The choice becomes impossible to ignore. Either rise into congruence or grip harder to the costume. That's why reactions fracture. Some are magnetized, others repelled. Not because anyone's right or wrong, but because alignment reveals. And when alignment is real, it doesn't wait for permission. It changes the atmosphere and invites people to meet themselves again, if they dare. Some will call it confusion. Others will call it destiny. Either way, movement begins the moment the mask feels too tight. Disruption isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, unshaken, unwilling to pretend. Certain lives are wired not to please, but to awaken. Not by intention, but by nature. When someone rooted in truth walks in, the room shifts. Some feel grounded, others start to fidget. It's not about being liked or disliked. It's about what truth demands. And truth, real truth, is a filter. It clears out what's performative, softens what's rigid, and confronts what's out of alignment. That's why the response is split. Not because the energy is inconsistent, but because it refuses to dilute. It doesn't bow to ego or cater to comfort. It presents a challenge: evolve or recoil. Some interpret this presence as freedom. They breathe easier, feel more themselves. Others brace, as if a storm just arrived. But it's not a storm, it's a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. Those built on performance will always feel exposed around someone who doesn't need applause to stand firm. They call it too much, too raw, too something. But it's not exaggeration, it's precision. Some were never meant to blend in. They're designed to realign the atmosphere. And that will never sit well with those who thrive in chaos disguised as order. The divide is inevitable, but so is the shift. Not everyone has to agree. Some will resist, others will realign. What matters is the frequency stays true, because the ones who unsettle the room are often the ones who wake it up.